The release of this movie was really big. This was when comic book movies were gaining more and more steam, and Warner Bros. Felt as though they had a hit on their hands, choosing to give the movie a budget of $255 million. When the movie first came out, I was too young to watch it, so instead, like every other superhero-obsessed boy, I caught the fight scenes on YouTube. I watched those pretty often throughout the past few years, and I knew the general plot, but my main focus was on those intense fights. If there's one thing Zack Snyder does extremely well, it's fight scenes. 300 might be really inaccurate, but who doesn't love Leonidas taking on the Immortals? We start the movie on Krypton and we stay there way too long. This did not need to be 20 minutes, it didn't need to be 10 minutes. Jor-El pretty much explains what happened anyway, and in a movie that was over 2 hours long, this felt like a drag, and the actual story doesn't start until the 20-minute mark. Krypton does look pretty cool, and it seems like a mix of Game of Thrones and Star Wars. Why Zod killed only one counselor, I do not know. He has no qualms about killing, he never hesitates to kill. If he had killed him, he never would have gotten caught, and the plot of this movie never would have happened. Why establish him as ruthless just to make him do a really non-ruthless thing? If he wanted them as hostages, they could have thrown that in a line really easily.
The rest of you will be tried and punished accordingly.
Until then, you will make useful hostages. Even if the writers wanted to establish Zod's reverence for justice, why have him kill anyone? For this line to fit, Zod should have came in, shot the guards, and then said the line about trying the council. Outside of my Zod complaints, once Kal-El is sent to Earth and Jor-El dies, we get the destruction of Krypton. Laura, Kal's mother, is the only one left, and she's clearly broken from all that's gone on. She's given up hope in Krypton, and all she can think of is Kal. The core of the planet explodes and Laura accepts her death, now having nothing else to live for. Her mission is done. She was successful in getting him off planet, now it's up to fate. This is the best part of the Krypton section, but it was cheapened by the dragging out of the opening. We start out the story on a small fishing boat. Clark is a rookie just trying to find his place in the world. He sees some people who need to be saved, so he apparently flies over to them. Now I say apparently because he kind of just shows up on the oil rig. I really want to know how he got there canonically, because when he flies later on in the movie acts as if it's his first time doing that. Now you might think he ran on the water, but if he knew he was fast enough to do that, why hitchhike later on? He had a destination in mind, and he wanted to get to the ship before the army did. Superman appearing here makes no sense. Clark decides to go to shore and steals clothing. Now people have said that the Superman in this movie isn't the real Superman, and that the real Superman would never do that. I'm conflicted on this. One of Superman's most famous nicknames is the Big Blue Boy Scout, and my personal experience as a Boy Scout did not involve stealing. On the other hand, this isn't really enough to make me think that this man couldn't be the one I read about in the comics. That kind of stuff comes later on. Clark sees a bus which makes him flashback to a bus accident he was in. He saved the kids on the bus, and people start talking about his abilities. Jonathan Kent then tells Clark that maybe he should have let the kids die. Let me repeat. Jonathan Kent, the man who supposedly raised Superman to want to help people, said that maybe he should have let the kids die. Throughout the movie, we are told that Clark wants to help people, but almost all of Jonathan's scenes are him telling Clark not to help people. Clark gets a job in the town that he went ashore in, and remember how I said that there was stuff that made this Superman feel off? This is where it starts. Clark deciding to destroy this guy's truck is a very weird decision. Having him get pushed around and then decide to throw a tantrum makes Clark, who is 33, seem 15. Instead, the guy should have challenged Clark to a fight instead of pouring a drink on him. In this alternate reality, Clark would say that he doesn't want to fight, the guy could push the issue and swing on him, breaking his own hand. This way, Clark still ones up the guy, but keeps his meek demeanor, and you save money on CGI. Lois Lane arrives in the Arctic, and I want to say something that may be a little controversial. Cassie Lang is a better character than Lois. They're both annoying, but in different ways. Cassie is more of a know-it-all, but that can be sort of waved off by saying she's a teenager. Lois is a reporter who needs info, so her first thought is to act like she has power over the people who have said info. Even if she hates these people, keeping a facade of being nice would make these people a lot more willing to talk to her. No one wants to talk to someone they hate, and Lois, supposedly having won a Pulitzer Prize, should know that. Maybe they're trying to establish her as a no-nonsense type, but this type of temperament isn't consistent with the rest of the movie. If you want to see no nonsense Lois done right, check out Superman the Animated Series. The romance between Clark and Lois is a lot more fun, and they don't just randomly kiss like they do in the movie. Now that I'm on the subject, why add the romance aspect here at all? I know that the two of them end up together very often, but they barely talk to each other, and when they do, it never feels like the two of them have feelings for each other. Clark finds a Kryptonian ship and plugs his pendant into it. Jor-El appears, and they could have just had Jor-El explain what happened on Krypton, basically saying exactly what he did, but adding how Krypton was destroyed and how he died, and cut the first 20 minutes completely, but I've complained enough about Krypton. Lois gets attacked and Clark saves her from bleeding internally by cauterizing her wound. I'm not a doctor, but that doesn't sound right. The ship gives Clark a suit and he learns how to fly while Lois starts looking for him. Lois finds him pretty quickly because Clark can't cover his tracks to save his life. Now, given the fact that later on the entire government is looking for him and can't find him, I think Clark should have been looking for Lois because she was going to publish her story. If it was done that way, the government doesn't look less competent than a reporter, and you can still keep the romance side plot. The obvious joke here is that the government is that incompetent, but in all reality, if Lois found him, the government would have found him in about an hour. When Lois and Clark talk, we get another flashback, this time to Jonathan Kent's death. It is a very dumb death. Basically, the family is driving and they get caught in traffic while a tornado comes through. Jonathan gets his foot caught in between the door and the seat after he saves a dog, and another car falls on the car that Jonathan is in. Jonathan gets out, tells Clark not to save him, and Clark just lets him die. Clark could have saved him without revealing himself easily. Just run over, pick him up, and run back under the bridge. Run fast, but not superhumanly fast. He had about 10 seconds and just didn't use them. I am glad that I don't need to talk about him anymore because he is the worst character in the movie by far. The real Jonathan Kent would hate this one. Zod arrives on Earth and says that Clark has 24 hours to turn himself in. Clark spends a lot of time wondering if Zod can be trusted, and there are a few problems here. Why is Clark not overjoyed that there are more Kryptonians out there?
My people. I know where I come from now.
Krypton had its chance!
He doesn't know Zod killed his father yet. All he knows is that this group claims to be from the same race. A little caution is good. Why is Zod giving him an ultimatum? He knows that he can destroy the planet easily, but putting up a diplomatic front might make Clark more willing to turn himself in. Clark does turn himself in, but it's to the US military. This is where the Superman complaints started to make more sense. Clark comes off as cold and unfeeling. Superman is meant to be a human with superpowers and should feel like he's respectful, but won't be bullied. Instead, he feels smug. He does show one commander respect, but only after he calls into command and says that he isn't the enemy. I thought that it was just a meme, but Henry Cavill really does act more like Superman in real life than on screen. He should have just gone to the ship to surrender, but instead he wastes time intimidating the military. Maybe he wanted to talk to Lois, but he could have just broke her out and saved time. Faora comes to pick up Clark and Lois, and she takes the two back to the ship. Once Clark escapes the ship, the rest of the movie is pretty much just action with a few breaks here and there. The action is good, but it isn't good enough to make me forget about all the bad in the movie. I wonder why the warrior Kryptonians get their powers so fast and Clark is still able to take on two of their top warriors, but hey, why worry about the plot? This stuff looks cool, so that's enough, right? I do want to say that I'm glad Superman destroying half of Metropolis had consequences later on, because this is horrible. Why he didn't challenge Zod to a fight outside the city, I do not know. I will say that I am somewhat accepting of Clark killing Zod in the way that he did, given how you could say that Clark was on the Earth longer, so he soaked up more radiation, and up until that point he was just trying to beat Zod into submission. It's kinda dumb, but it's not the worst explanation ever. I know that I'm grasping at straws a little bit, but the ending of this fight is the least of the movie's problems, yet it gets brought up the most often when talking about this movie.
A good death has its own reward.
Zack Snyder makes movies with great action and cinematography, but the characters tend to be off. Superman, Lois, and Batman are all characters that have thousands of pages on how to write them, yet he keeps getting them wrong. I haven't seen the Snyder cut of Justice League yet, but I'm willing to guess that I won't like it. I can watch a movie meant for mindless viewing every now and then. Not every movie has to be Citizen Kane, but some consistency would be nice. The pieces are there for an at least decent movie, but there are so many missteps. The three characters that I do like, Laura, Feora, and Mara Kent, all managed to stay consistent and were impactful despite their lack of screen time. I really don't get how they got Martha so right, but Jonathan so wrong. Jonathan being willing to let children die is what really clued me into the fact that I wasn't going to like the movie. Maybe most of the movie being bad is better than finding out that the movie is bad at the end. At least you know what's coming. If you want a senseless movie with some great action, then this is for you. For me, this was the movie version of Don't Meet Your Heroes. The fight scene clips are awe-inspiring, but the plot just fails to live up. Thanks for making it to the end of this video. If you want to see more videos from me, make sure you subscribe, like the video. That all helps. The algorithm loves that stuff. And it's nice to see when people like my videos and they subscribe. So drop a comment if you have anything that you want to say about, oh, I think you got this wrong, or hey, I agree here, but I think you left this out. That's always helpful, especially for later stuff, and I really like to get that type of constructive criticism, so drop it.